podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to Humans of Speedway, the podcast that aims to find out a little more about some of those stars on the shale and a few from the other side of the air fence as well, as we kick off series number 4. I'm Ian Brannan, and joining me this time is, simply put, one of the most successful team managers of recent times, winning 4 Premiership titles, also a silver medal in the Speedway World Cup and the Speedway of Nations. He's a Swindon lad, a Swindon hero, but also a Poole Pirates legend. He's Rosco.
Just fronted up on my doorstep with his girlfriend with an old Mercedes car with a double bike rack on and the whole back seat absolutely full to the hilt. And he said, "Hello, my name's Tony Rickardson, I'm from Sweden." And he said, "I was told if I'd give you a shout, you'd give us a bed for a few days." Well, that few days turned into about 2.5, 3 weeks. The rest is history with Tony, really, isn't it?
Alun Rossiter is a member of a very select club in British Speedway. He's one of the few who's actually won the top league title as both a rider and a team manager. Later on, we'll also put Roscoe's promoter skills to the test as well as he designs his dream Speedway meeting, and much more besides to come as well in this episode of Humans of Speedway. And it gives me a very great pleasure to welcome along Alun Rossiter to Humans of Speedway. And Alun, we join you at work. You're in one or two places for your work, really, but you're in the Southbrook Inn, which is your pub that you run. And obviously, I don't think you're quite open yet. Fairly quiet start to the day for you, but that's where you can be found these days.
Or behind a wheel of a truck. Probably more behind the wheel of a truck, I would say, at the moment.
Okay. I was going to say about the truck driving, because obviously that's been something that you've had a truck driver's license for quite a long time, hasn't you? And of course, Speedway riders, a lot of Speedway riders have other trades that they dip into from time to time. So for you, truck driving, was it?
Yeah, no, I do get frustrated when people now, they sign a contract and they think that's it, they're a professional Speedway rider. And it's not going, back in the day. But generally, I literally was driving and I rode Speedway. And the money I earned from driving kept my equipment at top notch. So it was just one of them things. And I think people nowadays are going to have to, go back to it, I think, personally.
Yeah, wise words there, folks. Have a fallback plan in case Speedway doesn't work out. Rosco, then for you started off, as many of us do, as a young fan, and probably, I guess, similar to many, it's the parents that started, isn't it, and that get you into Speedway, and you went along as a very young lad for your first meeting, and really it all went from there.
Basically, my mum and dad, my dad worked for British Rails in Swindon. They moved up from Wales because there was no jobs, not much jobs going down in Wales. So they moved to Swindon, and Swindon had a massive railway industry, which sadly is gone now. And used to get free travel. And one day we went up on a Friday night to Hampden Park in Scotland. Swindon were up there on the Friday. And the rematch then was back down to Swindon on the Saturday. So we went up on the Friday night up to Hampden Park, stood over the fence, and Bob Kilby spotted us. And he said, "What, you've come all the way up from Swindon, have you?" And we said, "Yeah, we follow everywhere," because obviously Dad had free travel. And he said, "You deserve something for that." He said, "Bring the boy down the pits." And back then, when they say that teams had race suits, Swindon were one of the few teams in the early late 60s, early 70s that had the red and white levers. And I had one made with a plastic helmet, and I had a bib jacket on, and I had like red and white leggings and red and white top, so it looked like I had the race suit on. And so anyway, yeah, true to his word, we did the meeting at Hampden Park, and as a kid, I got dragged into the pits, fortunately, and Jimmy McMillan was riding, and I didn't realise at the time there was a burger van near the pits, and I kept going up thinking it was free, and Jimmy Mack just said, "Don't worry about it, I'll square up with you afterwards." I was getting up drinks, burgers, thinking it was free. But good old Jimmy Mack, he said, "Oh, don't worry." He said to the woman, apparently, "I'll sort it out afterwards." So, yeah, we got back to Swindon the following night, 7:30 start, the rematch against Glasgow. And sat on Bob's toolbox. And then a couple of weeks later, I was going out on the parade on his handle across his frame of his bike. And then after that, I became the mascot then from, I would say, late 69, 70 till I was about 11 or 12.
And you started out as that kid who was a mascot, one of those youngsters. You were about 4 years old, walking out at Wembley with Barry Briggs. What was that like?
Yeah, I did, and Barry Briggs, Clive Hitch. It was a funny one because at Wembley, obviously Wembley back then was pretty strict. They were all dressed up in they looked like what would you say? They looked like prison suits. The blacks like jackets, trousers, and they had hats on. And every time I got in, he said, "Oh no, you can't be in here, mate." And I got kicked out twice. And then my last ditch attempt to get back in the pits was Clive Hitch had turned up, and obviously, because I was a mascot then, I just like Clive said, "Yeah, I'll take that in for me, young'un." So I just grabbed his gallon of methanol and walked in. Just went up to the security guard. I got Clive's fuel, mate, and just walked past him. And then
I'm with the band.
and he looked and he just shook his head, and I just walked straight past him. And I was in the pits, and then I was stood by the wall, and lo and behold, at the time, the presenter was Diddy David Hamilton. And I walked out, and I marched out onto the hallowed greens of Wembley. And as I marched out, I got there and I stood by the boys, by Barry Briggs, Bob Kilby, and that. And David Hamilton come across to me. He said, "Oh, what's your name?" And I said, Alun Rossiter. And like this all, how old are you? Four, like echoing all around that, the whole Wembley sort of stand like. So, but yeah, it was a pretty special thing because nobody was allowed out onto the hallowed turf. And I think the only other ever mascot that got out in that time was actually in 1969 was Swindon had a mascot for the football when Swindon Town beat Arsenal in the League Cup final when the legendary Don Rogers and Roger Hunt scored the winning goals for Swindon.
Wow. Okay, so a select crowd then.
Well, I would say so. Tom, there was all this hoo-ha about Swindon. The Swindon girl mascot had gone out there, and all of a sudden the advert found out. Our local paper found out. Well, hang on a minute. Alan was up there a few weeks before that.
You're a trailblazer. On the subject of Bob Kilby, people will be familiar with Lee Kilby, of course, colleague of mine on BSN, but also colleague of yours as well. So fast forwarding the story just a little bit here on the Kilby front, and Lee was one of the co-promoters with you when you won the league title in 2019 with Swindon as well. So a long history with the Kilby family.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Bob was my hero because obviously what he did for me, to get me in as the mascot, and like it was a genuine nice thing. And we stayed friends for a long, long time. And even when Bob stopped riding, I got him to come with me. And another funny story, I was at Sheffield and I was struggling to get out the start. So Bob, being Bob, Bob, everybody who knew Bob Kilby, he said, "Let me have a look at that clutch." So he set my clutch up, and I went and did it at Sheffield. You go out, and you could go up to the start line, come back, and do a practice start. And next minute, I went and do a practice start, and I looped it before the race, just doing a practice start. And apparently, Lee was with Bob in the pits at Sheffield, and this bloke started laughing. Next minute, Bob had him up by the throat and said, "That's my boy, don't you laugh at him." So yeah, we're the Kilby family. They're kind of like, we're a close family and friends, and we go back a long way. And the fact that and the funny thing is that obviously Bob had his own haulage company, and that's where the connection sort of set up. Where Bob was working for a company who I started working for. And they're like sort of kind of, I did like Bob Road Speedway, drove trucks, and I kind of did exactly the same. And to be fair, the truck thing has saved me, especially with COVID, because I got a pub, and obviously when the pubs are shut, you got no income coming in. So I looked at what could I do. So that's hence when I went back driving, and it's been too hard to give up, really, because I've got a reason. I work for a local company, and they look after me. And it's really good. So I combine the both. So I go out early in the morning, and then I get back by lunchtime, and then I toodle around the pub, get everything all ready. Any jobs that need doing, cleaning the lines, making sure any little jobs that need doing, and I do that now. And that's it, really. Sadly, no involvement in Speedway. Mind you, I still keep an eye on it. I still watch it. I keep a check on it. I watch both leagues. There's a couple of nice little few youngsters coming through the ranks. I think gave young Sam Hagan a go at the start of the year when we had a Swindon Select versus Oxford, and then we had one down at Poole, and Sam seems to have took the ball by the horns and stepped on quite nicely, which is good for him.
Well, that brings us on to a nice little point, actually, and a nice little sort of parallel in a way, because Sam's going to spend quite a bit of time in Australia this winter, and that's something you did, isn't it, in your early days? You had the opportunity to go on an Australia tour, and no doubt learnt lots doing that.
It's a massive learning curve. You're away from your parents, and hence why sometimes the Australians develop quicker than some of the English, because the English boys over here got their mum and dads, and that they don't have to fend for themselves. They kind of get everything done. Yet the Aussie boys come over and they've got to fend for themselves, and I just think it makes them a little bit harder.
Yeah, and an extra bike time as well, isn't it?
Yeah. They're over here. They're having to scrimp and scrape and get through. And yes, there's a lot of good people out in Speedway that help everybody. So if somebody turns up, a bit like me back in the day, people would just turn up on your doorstep. Hey, any chance can stay overnight? I'm riding tomorrow. And I was in the area, I got told that you'd put us up, and it was like one of them, a bit like, the biggest one for me was Tony Rickardson. Just fronted up on my doorstep with his girlfriend with an old Mercedes car with a double bike rack on and the whole back seat absolutely full to the hilt. And he said, "Hello, my name's Tony Rickardson. I'm from Sweden." And he said, "I was told if I give you a shout, I'd be able to get, you'd give us a bed for a few days." Well, that few days turned into about 2.5, 3 weeks. And as you say, the rest is history with Tony, really, isn't it? 6 times world champion.
Yeah, and what did he do after that?
What did he do after that? And the nice thing was, I had a testimonial back down in Poole. I think 2000 or late 90s. I had a testimonial, and Tony was current world champion, wasn't riding in England, and I just sort of chanced my arm. I rung him up. I said, "Oh, Tony," I said, "Alun Rossiter." I said, Rosco, chatting away. And he said, "What can I do for you?" I said, "Just an off shot, if I can try and get some sponsors together. Any chance you'd come over and do my testimonial?" Well, I never expected what the reply was when he went, "Absolutely no problem," he said. "I'll never forget when I turned up on your doorstep when I first come to this country. You're the first person that put me up." And he said, "I'm coming over and I don't want a penny."
Wow, that's pretty cool, isn't it? And it just shows, doesn't it? You just never know. I think this is a case with everything in life. When you meet people like this, you just never know how it's going to turn out, do you?
No, and like I said, and I was expecting it's going to cost me a couple of grand or whatever, and it's just absolutely not a penny. And it was back in the day when he had the big, the big bus. The massive bus that was purple and yellow and stuff like that. So he turned up at Poole with that, and just people just couldn't believe that Tony Rickardson doing Alun Rossiter. Mind you, I had a very good lineup that day. It was pretty special. So I didn't do too bad. So I must have done something a little bit right.
Well, you did a lot right. You did a lot right, as we'll talk about. Take us. You did a bit of cycle speedway. That was obviously something that you were doing before you got onto the engines. But you got yourself on the radar, and it was actually Peter Oakes has quite a big part in your career, doesn't he? In those early parts, and he sort of weaves his way through, and he's obviously no doubt he will be listening to this, and I'm no doubt his ears will be pricking up. But Peter Oakes was involved, and Exeter. Exeter was notorious for having that steel fence, wasn't it? But you got you some rides there.
Yeah, no, it was towards the end, halfway towards the end of the season, and I was then at the time working in the railways in Swindon. I was a junior storeman, and I got a call from HR offices and said there's a Peter Oates on the phone asking if you would go to Crayford, and this was like 9 o'clock in the morning. Would you go and race at Crayford for Exeter? So I said, can I get a pass out and go then? So my dad, there's another sad story actually, this one. So me and my dad had a Bedford HA Viva van. We took the front wheel out, popped it in, off we go up to Crayford, did the meeting. Me and my dad had a big row. And my dad said, son, I'm going to help you all I can, but I'm never coming to watch you again, because like I wanted to do it this way. I was shouting, we were shouting at each other, and sadly he stuck to his word, and he never come to another Speedway meeting again. But he did back me all the way. And as you said about the Australian tour, about when we said about riders, I blew an engine up, and he back in the day, it's not like you could just FedEx it over. It had to go into a box, had to be packed, had to have a CMR and all this sort of stuff and things like that, And I remember on my 18th birthday with Exeter, they bought me a brand new Westlake, complete brand new bike. And what they were doing, the mechanic I had at the time, Malcolm Constable, we were buying stuff off a guy from Pegasus before Max Richards took over, from George Holden. Kevin Holden's dad used to run Pegasus. And each week, Malcolm would be like, you go and get change, I'll load up. And he would sneakily start putting all the new bits in the car. And then John Hewlett, Martin Hewlett's father, built this new bike up for me, and I had a surprise on my 18th. But yeah, so like you said, going back to the Australian tour, that does help you. It makes you, grow up. But there's good people in Australia too, and I still, from my days from doing the tour in 87, 88, and I did Ivan's long track tour. You got friends for life from it, and even now with a wonderful, what Facebook's good for is keeping in contact with people from many years ago that you stayed with or went over with, and just keeping in contact. It was absolutely, it's been truly amazing. So. But yeah, as I said, I think the boys that come over, it does harden them up, and it makes them realise what they've got to do. And where I think sometimes the English boys got it a little bit easy, and I'm not being critical of anybody or anyone, but that's just my humble opinion, at the fact that they have to come over and fend for themselves and get on with it. Like, I just think they grow up a bit quicker.
Yeah, and obviously it is a long way to go. We're talking about Sam Hagan going over there, but you got to bear in mind, like say Josh Pickering of modern times, or Jason Doyle. They've abandoned everything at some point and then come over here and set up from scratch with no friends, no house, no car, no anything. And
same as Boise. Craig Boyce done the same. Like he used to live in Peckham do his bikes at Steve Schofield's garage. And live in a flat in Peckham. And, these boys that come over, Tony Langdon as well, all these young Australian fellas that come home early doors, that's where I got it from, is how they've had to grow up pretty quick, Got your first taste of silverware, though, racing with Exeter, the Knockout Cup with Weymouth in the end, and that was like the end of your first full season, wasn't it? I think 83 or so, and you put a fair few points away there to help them on their way. Yeah, no, it was a thing, like you said. Peter Oakes rung me up, and I had a few glitches along the way. The first season before I think it was 83 was my first full season, but I did that one at the end of 82 where I went to Crayford. And then I got a couple of calls up on the Monday, but I had real car issues. The car kept breaking down. And believe me, it wasn't breaking down because back in the day, the amount of cars that broke down, but people were racing at Exeter, was unreal. Sorry, can't make it tonight. I'm broke down on the M5.
Yeah.
It was, honestly, back in the day, there's so many teams turned up with 6 riders because the other rider, obviously they never left. But they said they were broke down on the M5 and couldn't make it and stuff like that because of the steel fence put a lot of people off. But it was one of the tracks I really did enjoy. It wasn't the smoothest, believe it or not. the straights were like the double hoops down the straight. You take off at the pit gate and your front wheel would land just as you're entering the third and fourth bend. Then you'd have to race up to the middle of the metal fence and then catch the dirt and rail the top of the fence at Exeter. But yeah, no, so many cars. And so I had issues, kept breaking down. And Oaksy was quite ruthless to me early doors. As well as I was doing, I was actually doing all right. And I was getting there sort of a bit late, not late for the meeting, but getting there 7:15, 7 o'clock. Well, I can't help it if the car broke down. So Oaksy said, "Well, if you're late next week, you won't be in the team the following week." So I did end up breaking down, and my dad ended up buying a car so we could try and get there without any issues. And that was it then, really. After 82, then I got signed up by Peter in 83. And I won my first full season there. I won Skoda Man of the Series. Skoda was sponsoring the stuff down there at Exeter. And my first full season, I went out from reserve. I went into the as heat leader in my first full season at Exeter.
Times were different. There were more characters then. You were one of them, and you have been known to dress up on occasion, haven't you, Rosco?
I remember going out on parade up in Glasgow, and me being me, I went out on parade and I put a kilt on with an Exeter race jacket just on the top. Had my boots on and a kilt. I went out on parade, and I kind of think that not many these sort of things want the sort of dumb things to do, but I think I broke the mould, and you kind of got your characters. And sort of breaking into characters. It's a bit like now, unfortunately, if you're a bit of a character, people don't take you serious now because you've got to be focused, switched on, and doing all the right things, eating the right things, not going to the pubs and stuff like that, not eating fish and chips and pie and chips at the end. You've got to be like focused. So if you're kind of a character, I think you kind of get looked at nowadays that you're not taking it serious. Sadly, but Speedway does need characters 100%.
And yeah, you get your characters, clown around a bit. We've had Shane Parker on this podcast before, and he was one of them. But I guess also need those pantomime villains. People obviously have the riders they love, but also the ones that they hate but respect. And say, for example, Nicky Pedersen will be a good example of that.
Great. Nicky's superb. I rode with Nicky at Wolverhampton, and ever since that time we fought. He rode at 5 and I rode at 4, and we forged a friendship. And I always remember, it was like I'd be going to the Grand Prix, a couple of early doors. I went with Chris Harris and stuff like that. And I'd walk around the pits, and Nicky'd invite me into his big motorhome tent. He said, "Always been good to me, Alan." He said, "Anytime you want to come in," he said, "the door's always open. Come and help yourself to a coffee, or at the end of the meeting, if you want a beer, come and have a beer." So again, how you treat people and how you do it, like Tony Ricardson and then Nicky Pedersen, and we've stayed friends as well, and often have a little chin wag, a little message. How you doing? Good to see you doing well. Congratulated him on becoming a team manager, the next step up into from Speedway to staying in the sport.
Alun Rossiter is my guest on this episode of Humans of Speedway, and in the next part we'll talk about Roscoe's riding career. Of course, a legend with Swindon, but many people forget actually he was most successful as a Poole Pirate. We'll talk about all of that in the next part of Humans of Speedway. You're listening to Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan, and if you are new to this podcast, well, a warm welcome along. We've been doing it for a little while now. This is the 4th series. There's plenty of previous episodes to go back through. Please have a listen to those at your leisure, because hopefully they're reasonably timeless. And for the ones that maybe have dated a bit, you will know what's happened since. So go back and listen to those at your leisure. And many more episodes to come over the course of the winter between now and the next season. That's the idea. Rosco is with us, Alun Rossiter. We'll talk about Roscoe's managerial career in a bit. We'll also hear about his dream Speedway meeting, and he's also going to play our new game, which is called the Fish Game. Now, this is something I've done in previous life when I've been interviewing pop stars on radio stations a number of years ago. But I thought we need to give it a Speedway twist so Rosco can take on the fish a little late, which is going to be surreal. Let's get back to your riding career now, Rosco, because Swindon and Poole were two of the clubs that you're most synonymous with, but also you've had time at Coventry as well. But starting with Swindon, heading back to your club where it all started for you, this is the club that you supported as a youngster, going along with your dad and Bob Kilby being your hero, and then to find yourself now as a rider at Swindon, that must have been pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, well, as I say, we started off at Exeter 83, then I went to Weymouth in 84, and then Swindon came knocking and fancied me to double up. Like, it's back in the day when you could do championship and at the time. And I went at 85, and I had a reasonable season. And then come 86, I had a phone call saying that they didn't want me. And next minute, lo and behold, I had Charles Ochiltree on, asking me to go to Coventry. And I remember at the time, Bernard Crapper, I was good friends with him, even though Oxford were our biggest rivals back in the day, Swindon, Oxford. I had a very good relationship with Bernard. And he said to me, whatever you do, get into that club. Whatever you do, that will make you a Speedway rider. And yeah, lo and behold, 86, got a phone call from Charles, went at the meeting. I took the guy who was working for a haulage company up with me. We went to meet Charles. We had all these big ideas, what we were going to ask for. And then he just went, it was unreal. He just got this bit of paper out, Charles did. And he'd say, right, your name, address. He wanted your parents' name, their address, telephone numbers. And he got that. I signed it, give that back. And the next minute, open another drawer, wheel out another bit of paper. So I had it all in my head, like everybody said, Coventry, they good payers back in then. It's like, if you get to Coventry, you'll be made. So we thought, wow, we'll chance our arm. Like. So anyway, next minute, opens the drawer, out comes another paper with his contract on. Well, when we started reading it, I kicked my mate Phil Vernon's leg. I said, Phil, shut up, we'll accept it. It was like double what we were asking for. and there was incentives. If I got to this point, so I'd get another couple of grand, and if I got this insurance and I got that, and he would help. And it was just like, right, shut up, Phil. Yeah, seems okay, Mr. Ochiltree. I think I'll have a little chat. What do you think? Yeah, I think we'll accept that.
Yeah, I think we can make it work.
Yeah, I think we can make that work just about, like, not trying to make it too obvious. So we sort of went in with one figure and they come out with double figure. Okay, well, it sounds fair. Those are the dream contract negotiations, I guess, aren't they? But do you look back and think, were you on loan? You went like on loan, didn't you, to Coventry from Swindon? Yeah, I went to Coventry in the 86, and again, the conversations went with Bernard Crapper, Rosco, whatever you do, stay at Coventry. It will make you as a speedway. And at the time, it was like, when you're local, there's a lot of pressure on you, riding for your hometown club. But Bernard would say, like, end of the year, Coventry, come back on. Said, right, Alan, he said, I've made a decision. I'm going to buy you from Swindon. So I went back to Swindon and said, Coventry want to buy me. And they said, no, we're not going to sell you. So I went back to Charles and said, well, it's obviously Swindon. He said, Alan, let me make it quite clear. He said, if I want to buy Bobby Schwartz from Cradley, I will buy Bobby Schwartz from Cradley. He said, and if I want to buy Alun Rossiter from Swindon, I will buy Alun Rossiter from Swindon. I went, all right, okay. So I went back, and Swindon, offered me a little bit more money, and I showed them what I kind of got at Coventry that year. And I think the lure of just riding for your home club, and maybe a mistake, because Bernard Crapper always told me it was a big mistake leaving Coventry when I did. And I went back to the bright lights of being a hometown rider and local paper and stuff like that. I think that was probably the thing that drew me back, and probably wasn't the right decision, if I'm totally honest.
It feels like you've got those words sort of echoing in your mind, actually, there, because you said, obviously, that Bernard Crapper had said, whatever you do, don't leave Coventry, and then that's exactly what you ended up doing.
Yeah, I did, because, again, I think it was the shiny lights of riding for your hometown, Seeing your mates around and everything, seeing yourself in the local paper and that. And I think that kind of glazed over what I really should have done, if I was quite honest.
So you went to Coventry, which, that was a big decision to make, leaving behind that hometown club of Swindon at that point. So what was the reaction back at Swindon?
I made my debut and I went practicing at Swindon and a few of the riders were giving me, not giving me stick, but kind of giving me a hard time going on. And a few of the supporters going, Rosco looks slow out there, looks really crap. Because I went up, it was their press day, but I was riding. I said, look, can I have a practice? I haven't really done much because we had a bit of a practice at Coventry and it was raining, track was really heavy and we struggled to get around. So I went to Swindon on the Saturday morning of their press day and I had a skid around and a few people, he looks crap. Well, good job we got rid of him. Well, I went up to Coventry and we had Oxford in the first match in '86 at Coventry. And we got up there, we got held up. And back round then you had like going through Bingley Woods and that. It's a one-way system into Coventry. You got the chip shop and the pub. Then you go round to the right one way. Well, when we got to that bend, it was that queued back. We went up the no entry way where cars come down. So we went out that way, cut, and I think we got there for about 7:15 because the traffic was just absolutely rammed. The whole stadium, you just couldn't move at Coventry at the time. And I was looking at online the other day. I think I made my debut for Coventry that night, and I even beat Simon Wigg, who was riding for Oxford at the time up there. And I think I got about 14 paid 16 that night, or 13 paid 16 or something like that. And I had a real dream debut, which kind of silenced a few of the Swindon people after that,
Yeah, and then you go back to Swindon, of course, but it's not sort of the long relationship that maybe you might have hoped, and you ended up getting traded, and then come the Poole Pirates years, but as fortune would have it, that they ended up being your most successful as a rider.
They went reasonably okay. It was funny then because Swindon were just trying to chase, Ron Byford was trying to buy Andrew Silver at the time in '88, and basically coming the end of '88, Swindon were needed the money to buy Andrew, and Poole come on to buy me in '89, and Swindon sold me to Poole in '89, and so they sold me for £10,000. They bought me, Poole bought me, and kind of really all my success really as a rider was in a Poole race jacket basically, and nothing seems to have changed for Poole since 1989. They were winning things, and even up to they didn't have the best, they didn't win everything this year, but they still won the BSN Cup, but still made every final, but obviously a real top club and good to ride for.
It kind of doesn't matter who has been running the Poole Pirates over the years, and yeah, they've not had every year as a successful year, but more often than not they've certainly had an air of success around them, and they've been there or thereabouts in whichever division they've been in, haven't they? And this kind of vibe of success, if you like, has long been around the Poole Pirates. What is it about that club for you?
Yeah, when I signed, it was Pete Ansell and Mervyn Stewart. They moved up when Weymouth shut, and they took over. And them two were like a great double act. Obviously Mervyn had the money, and he put Pete to run the club, and Pete run it really professionally. And again, it was just so unreal that the fact that you signed up for Poole, and like you say, from Mervyn and Pete to Matt Ford, and now Danny's now starting to take over the realms. Matt's still about. Don't anybody kid yourself. Matt don't take his finger off the pulse, let me tell you. Whilst Danny's doing a lot, believe me, yeah, but Matt's still in the background and knows what he's talking. I still have conversations with him, so I know that he's still thereabouts. And they are, like you say, they are a well-run club, a successful club, and always have been successful. And I think the envious of supporters at times is quite funny, really. And as I said, I had all of my success as a rider was in the Skull and Crossbones, and it's quite a thing. I'm the joint 15th top scorer for Poole Pirates, alongside me and Darcy Ward are on the same amount of points.
Is that right? Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Well, you are in the top. They did somebody put together like a top 50 riders of all time for Poole, and you are one of the all time greats officially. Of the Poole Pirates, so and considering the company that you're in.
My problem is for the Poole fans. As much as I won silverware and did a lot for Poole over the years, is that I ended up going back there as a manager. So being an ex-rider and that, and the old fans, they're still brilliant with me, but the new age fans, they started getting a bit niggly in the booze coming in. Certainly in 2012 when Swindon went down there and beat them and that, and you got on the mic and they started booing. Hang on a minute, I rode for this club with a lot of distinction. Why am I getting booed? And I know why, because obviously I went back and I kind of rained on their fireworks, because I think if you look at what went on from 2010 up to 2019, I think Poole, honestly and truly, would have gone through the thing. But luckily, this guy from Swindon beat him in 2010 with Coventry, one of the biggest comebacks in a playoff final, probably. A bit like Sheffield, I guess, this year. Then 2012, we beat them. Then 2018 and 19. So I guess that's why some of them got it. But I still go down there and I generally get a good reception still. And there's a lot of good people down there. And, they have got that fan base is phenomenal down there. It's unbelievable. And it's just a well-run club and a good club, a great club. And I got nothing bad to say about them. And I say I love my time, but my job was then as Swindon manager to try and stop Midlow and Co. And that's what I did. But
that's the other thing, isn't it? The consistency with Midlow is a part of that. He's been there throughout that whole time. He hasn't quite won the 30th title yet. I think he's on 29 currently. He was hoping to get that over the line this last season, but of course it didn't work out quite there. So he's left hanging on 29 trophies, but that's a lot of silverware to have won.
Let's hope he stays on 29. We don't want him getting too big-headed in the Midlow. We know what he's like.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm sure it's probably inevitable at some point. But they have and I guess it was probably similar to this in your era. Certainly when the later times like 2004, when some of the riders you had there, like Tony Ricardson was in the side then, and so on. And Tony then you talked about him staying with you, but Tony was set up with Midlow and Midlow's house. If anybody's wondered about it, but it's massive. And it's a bit of a home for Speedway riders, isn't it, really, with workshops and what have you. And Tony Ricardson, I think Tony Ricardson's old workshop is now a cafe. You can go and have a cuppa in there.
Correct.
Yeah.
That was actually Midlow's. That was Midlow's garage, and Midlow Tony had it for a while, and then nobody used it after that. Because I know Todd Kurtz, Brady Kurtz, and all them lot were all down there, the Aussie boys. And it never got used, and Midlow cleaned it out. And like you say, now it's a cafe. Yeah, we were down there camping this year, and we went in there, and he said, "Hey, Rosco, this is my old workshop." So
yeah,
it was quite nice. It was really good. So, but yeah, no, it's like 2004. That was my first year into management, and not a lot of people know, even though it was Terry Russell.
Just to clear up, that's not Terry Russell, that's the dog.
That is the dog. I've just taken it gone now. Sorry about that. Every time they see a bird in the car park, they go mental and they go chasing around. 2004, it was not many people actually know this at the time, is that Terry and Matt were kind of like, I got a phone call from Matt Ford. He said, "Roscoe, I want to meet up." We met up in Broadstone. And he said, "Look, we've got this little thing going, but nobody knows that I'm involved, but me and Terry Russell's bought the rights from Peter Toogood, and we want you to come in to be team manager and a promoter. And I said, oh yeah, okay. And I was kind of not doing nothing at the time. I think I was still living in Poole, and Matt come along, and I guess from there the rest is history. Right up to 2010, when I left in 2010 to go to Coventry.
And management for you, obviously you are, whether people agree with it or not, you are one of the most successful British Speedway managers ever. You're up there with all of the other names anybody could throw in there. The likes of Midlow or Peter Adams. You're there or thereabouts statistically with silverware. You got your first league title with Coventry, but you came close with Swindon before that.
And I'd hit a couple of crossbars. I've got to a couple of finals. Wolverhampton, a few dubious decisions cost us in 2009, and then 2010, I left Swindon and went to Coventry. From started in 2004 as team manager and promoter, and then I went to Coventry in 2010.
And 2010, one of the iconic endings to any Speedway season, really. Coventry versus Poole at Wimbourne Road. Bomber getting back on his feet, running back to the pits, and one of the great comebacks.
Alun Rossiter leads his team to victory. On August the 12th, they were bottom but one in the Elite League table. Now they are the Elite League champions. Let's hear from Alun Rossiter with Charlie.
Thanks very much. I think he's in shock at the moment, or are you feeling sick from being thrown up and down? Congratulations, Alun.
I can't believe it. 3 times. Them boys really wanted it, so I'm so proud of them. So proud. That was an ace team performance. And my captain, well, can't speak highly enough for him. To come back from that and do that was the turning moment. When he came back and won that race, amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It sort of kind of builds up from there, because I'd had a few issues with the owner at Swindon, and they had a couple of owners at the time, and things weren't running smoothly. And then all of a sudden, I get my Speedway star, like I still get to this day. Turns up in the post, and I remember seeing Peter Oakes had stood down. And funny enough, even though I'd gone there, I'd always got on really well with Sandu. He was always polite and pleasant, always came over, shook my hand, we'd have a conversation, we'd have a laugh, we'd have a joke. And as I said, I looked at it, and I saw that Peter Oakes, and I was pretty, I had a bit of discontent with Swindon with what with a few things in the background. And so I picked the phone up one day. I thought, sorry, I'm going to ring Sandu up. So I rung Sandu up on this night. I said, hi, Sandu, Alun Rossiter. I said, I see Peter Oakes is standing down. Are you looking for a team manager? Would you be interested in me? He went, oh, my God. He said, 100%. He said, I'm just getting on a plane to go to Tangier. But please, I promise you, when I land the other end, I will ring you straight back. And true to his word, he got the other end, and we had a conversation. As soon as he got off the plane, he said, right, I've just landed. What, blah, blah, blah. We'll have a short discussion now. And when I'm coming back in 2 days, I'll ring you. We'll have a decision. And I kind of made that decision to leave Swindon and go to Coventry. And probably was the making of me in management. Probably was the thing, because I think my early days, my passion, I was too passionate, and it was overtaking my focus of my job to do. As well, so I was screaming and shouting at the referees and stuff like that, sticking up for my boys, which was great. But there's a way in how you do it, and I kind of learnt that through working under the late great Colin Pratt, and I would say he was the one that really turned me into a good man, a very good manager. I always undersell myself at times, but after my successes, then, and people say, oh, you're being big-headed. No, actually, you've got to start believing in yourself, because other people won't. And I say with the help and guidance of Colin Pratt, I think he's rubbed them rough edges off of me and turned me into a top manager.
Was there a sense within you that you felt you needed to get back to Coventry, having been told by Bernard Crapper that you shouldn't leave and you should stay there for as long as you could, and then of course you did leave as a rider? Did you feel that sort of calling to go back in some way and fulfil that?
No, I think I wouldn't say the Bernard Crapper thing come into my mind at the time then, because obviously it was scenarios with the Ochiltrees back in that day in '86, but now it was new with Mr. Sandu and that. But they were still a top club with, riders like Billy Hamill, Greg Hancock, Billy Gennaro, and all these guys, all top, John Jorgensen, Rick Miller, Calvin Tatum, and all that.
When it came down to that playoff final, though, the riders you had, they were handy riders. Chris Harris was still, I think, in the Grand Prix around then. You had Ben Barker. Rory Schlein, I think, was involved earlier, wasn't he? Przemysław Pawlicki, who was a huge rising star, got 16+1 on that final night. And you're running rider replacement and still beat Poole at Wimbourne Road as well, which I think was the first time they'd been turned over that year.
That was, believe it or not, 2010 was kind of the making of me a little bit. So I had to make some bold decisions. And as you mentioned names there, Rory Schlein and people like that. I remember Rory was in the team that in 2010, and I remember dropping him and bringing Christoph Kasperzak in place of him. And it was like people were looking, going, what's going on here? And I think obviously at the time I didn't think Rory was too impressed at the time, but we had to make a decision because by the end, I think we were 26 points off the top from Poole at the end of the year when it come to. So big decisions had to be made. I brought in Richard Sweetman because that was a time of doubling up with the riders that we had. We had Richard Sweetman, Josh Orty was the other doubling up rider. Brought in young Nick Morris at the time. Edward Kennett was still there. We had Lewis Bridger. I brought Lewis Bridger in, and there was lots of changes, and we scraped into the playoffs, and then obviously after that, I guess is history, and the changes that were made, and and I got to say they were decisions that I made, obviously helped with Pratty there, but generally it was my call, and he was like, we'd discuss it, and they never questioned me, and they let me get on with it, and lo and behold, 2010 with the Bees, it was unbelievable.
And then really it went from strength to strength because you move back to Swindon after that and again became a league title winner in 2012, did it again in 2017, and what a team you had that year, because that was an embarrassment of riches, because Jason Doyle was racing for you at Swindon that year, and of course he went on to be world champion in 2017 as well, which you don't have a stronger heat leader than that in your side.
Yeah, no, it was it was a good time at the time, and it was a tough couple of years, to be honest. With the ownership problems that we had when I come back to Swindon, it was tough, and we had a couple of promoters in there that were you had Terry, and you had a guy called Gary Patchett, and it was really difficult, and it was a tough time, and we had good riders, Hans Anderson, people like that. It was like sort of really tough, but the good thing was that we kind of got through it. We got through it, and as I said, we then it changed. As I said, we had the likes of Doyley being there and stuff like that. So we had a really good team at the time.
And on the subject of team management, of course, you've managed the Great Britain Speedway team. You were the previous manager before Simon Stead and Ollie Allen. So you did that, I think, till 2018. But on top of that, and we'll talk more about that in a sec, on top of that, you actually rode for your country as well. So you've got caps at both levels on that front of Speedway too.
I was a part of the Sunbro. I made my debut, England debut at the old Bellevue Stadium.
The at Hyde Road?
Yeah, Hyde Road, yeah, the one with the zoo. And the legendary, at the time, you had Stuart Bamford was the promoter, wasn't it, if I remember right, and Stuart Bamford and John Perrin. I think John Perrin was Kirky Lane, but I think Stuart Bamford was an big old stock car man.
Yeah, and you were involved in some test matches as well. I know there's some footage online of, I think it's against Denmark, and you're riding with Chris Morton. So you kind of traversed a bit of an era, didn't you? Because you got to ride with some of these riders that were, from the the days of the 70s and so on, like Chris Morton, who had their sort of heyday then, and then also riding with the likes of Tony Rickardson and Nicky Pedersen. You've spanned quite a big era, really, as both as a rider, but also as a manager too. Yeah,
no, very much so. Like I say, I think, and also again, back in there, I think John Louis was England team manager, and I think David Norris had got injured, and I always remember getting a phone call from John Louis. There was a test match up at Vauxhall Stadium, and I got a phone call at 9:30 in the morning. Could I get to Ipswich for 2:00 because there was a test match? And money never even come into it. Like, just, of course, you're riding for your country, and like, of course I will, John. Sort of just dive on the car. Back in the day, there was no M25, straight through London, straight out onto the A12, and just getting there about half an hour to spare. And, racing, making a meeting there as well. Yeah, there was quite a few, and as I said, toured Australia, 87, 88, and it was I think it's the last official touring side, official, that was sent over by the BSPA at the time, and it was 87, 88, and we were the last official touring side that actually went there, and we won the series 5-2, which started off in Perth, and then we flew over to Sydney, and then we travelled around, and It was that making of me of going away from home, as we spoke about early doors, that actually going away and fending for yourself, and then meeting to get to know people, and you make friends for life, and you're still friends with people to this day from it.
You were the Great Britain team manager at a time of actually the first success in a long time for the Great Britain team. And people obviously will focus on the gold medal that we won in the Speedway of Nations. But before that, we'd had a couple of silvers. And silver's not as good as gold, but it's a lot better than what we'd achieved in the previous 27 years since we'd actually got any form of medal. And that was the World Cup in 2016. Held at Bellevue at the National Speedway Stadium, and then in Wrocław in 2018 in the Speedway of Nations. And to get those medals was a big achievement, but it was quite a transitional time for Speedway as well, wasn't it? Where, as you mentioned earlier, having a pint and a kebab afterwards was maybe once the thing that you did, but now professionalism, nutrition, diet, exercise, all the rest of it's a key part. And you were the national team manager when this real transition was coming into Speedway.
100%. It was at the time where 2014 I become Great Britain manager, and I was pushing hard for the BSPA to give us time. Let's get and race abroad. Let's do this. Let's do training camps. Let's do this. And we started it, and we spoke about it with Ty Woofenden and people like that. And I think then 2015, we ended up going over to Croatia. I took about 12 boys over to Croatia as a GB squad. And we went over there, did some fitness. We went racing out, which has never been heard of before. Like the Poles are doing it, the Danes are doing it, Swedes are doing it. But we were really at the back of it. And really, it was kind it was a kind of start of the revolution, really, of how Great Britain changed over the years. Because, like you said, for me, as a Great Britain manager, I feel that that winning our first silver medal in 2016 was amazing. But I think the one that will always stick with me as the manager was 2018 in Wrocław. The fact that the Speedway of Nations, but we won on the Friday. We beat the Poles, the Russians. We were top scorers on the Friday. We done exactly the same on the Saturday, but the fact that Ty had finished first and Robert had finished last, we didn't win it. But actually, for me, that was a victory, because it's never been known that a team and go and win in their own backyard. And for me, 2018, whilst I've got the silver medal for proof, but for me, that will always be gold in my mind. It isn't, but for me personally, that's how far we'd come.
And we've come even further since, the Poles, the Danes, while they might actually be getting the better of Great Britain at times, they are looking to what we're doing here, and they are taking a little leaf from our book.
Yeah, it's totally different now with the... it's run as a company now and everything, and all the finances are dealt with and that, and you've got the setup. I mean, and I got to say, if it wasn't for Keith Chapman, this wouldn't have got off the ground. He was a big vocal point in trying to get Great Britain into this professional era, and if it weren't for him pushing the other promoters who weren't really keen to spend their money in funding like the Great Britain squad before it got taken over by Rob Painter, things wouldn't have happened. And Keith was a chairman and really pushed it. And he had a big say in how the setup is to where it is nowadays. He was there. If it wasn't for his vocalness and standing strong with the other promoters, telling them they had to do it, he had a big say in that.
There's a lot of people who have never met Buster, but yet still have an opinion of him. And sometimes that opinion isn't right, because he's done a lot for Speedway, hasn't he? And there are many clubs that would not be in existence right now had he not stepped in at some point.
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, I have to say, early doors, me and him used to clash like hell. But in the end, not because of the fact of what he did for the Great Britain, but just in general, I guess you get older and you get a little bit, you see people through really what they are, and people always know me. I always speak the truth, and I learned that from Colin Pratt. Be honest with people. They don't like it. They don't like being told the truth, but it'll go a long way as a promoter and team manager if you stick to them principles. And Keith was pretty much the same too, in that mould too.
Just to get back to Swindon, obviously won the league title in 2019, and unfortunately that was the end of the story because COVID came in, and then the redevelopment has gone on and people can read about what's happened next. But what are the prospects of Speedway returning to either Swindon or indeed the Abbey Stadium? What is the latest that you know?
As I've said pretty much all along, unfortunately, it's not our club. It's owned by Terry Russell and Steve Park. So, whilst at the time we were promoters, we don't own the company or own the business, so it's very difficult to make any comments at all, really. But sadly, with the development of what they've done, I think they've made it pretty impossible now with the amount of car parking. I don't think noise is an issue up there, but the big issue now, if you were to wanted to race there, would be the parking. Because the thing with Swindon is you get people up from Bristol, Somerset, you get people come up from Newport, and they travel, and they'll need somewhere to park, and there's no parking up there, unfortunately. And with whoever's over the years let it dwindle into how it is, I think it's made it nigh on impossible to go back there, sadly.
Do you see yourself being back involved in Speedway at any point in a managerial capacity or anything like that?
I've discussed this before. I think I've had conversations with David Rowe and people like that. Is the problem is with Speedway, it doesn't matter how successful I've been as a team manager, it's all kind of a bit of a close-knit fraternity, It's not a massive amount of money in it, contrary to belief. I wasn't on big money, on really good money at all, being a promoter, team manager. I think it was more the prestige that you kind of did it and what you got out of it, especially being in Swindon. But you look at it, a lot of the clubs, and real sad to see that Wolverhampton are gone. Nobody saw that coming. But you look at it, they're all close-knit sort of families, like tied up. Like you've got Bellevue, you've got Mark Lemon up there, you've got Sheffield, you've got Simon Stead now who stepped into the realms up there. And again, they're a bit of a travel, and is the money there for me to go chasing around and doing stuff like that? But if I did it, it'd have to be on my terms, as it's always been. I've done it, over the years. I've met all the teams I've made myself. And you live, as I say, I always use the saying, you live and die by your sword. The sides are put together, you get credit for. And I think the biggest compliment I got this year was talking to Jason Doyle, and we were discussing teams and that. And he just burst out and said, "You've never put a rubbish team together, ever." So for someone like Doyley to say that, that's a massive compliment. I think most of my teams have been thereabouts. We missed 1 year, which I thought we had a great team, but I think the mixture of the riders and characters we had in the team didn't kind of mix. But generally, we made pretty much, from 2012 onwards, we were thereabouts. And, we got 12, 18 and 19, 17 and 19, got the 3 league titles, and Swindon were the club, a bit like Poole were the ones now starting to throw their weight about and be classed as a top club. And sadly, we finished, not sadly, it was great. 2019, we done the double. I know some people say what a way to finish on, but I'd still rather be Speedway in the town now, that's for sure.
And maybe take a bit of heart from the likes of Workington. They were all-conquering in their final season in 2018. And then they've had to find a new home as well, and they've done that, and heading back into the Championship in 2024. So it shows it can be done. It's not easy. Of course it's not easy, but you need to get those people who, can get the land and of course help finance it, but it can definitely be done.
Well, as I say, even if this thing at Swindon, where the current track isn't there, we'll see in the next couple of months. There's people that have been in contact with me that are willing to, that want to step forward and front the Speedway, but it's realistically trying to find a bit of land, really.
Yeah, fingers crossed that can be found, and we'll get the Robins back in action sooner rather than later, because there's definitely a big demand for it in that part of the world for sure. You're listening to Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan. My guest is a Swindon and Poole legend, and of course Coventry too. Alun Rossiter is with us, and in the final part, well, we're going to get him to play our new competition called the Fish Game. First contestant, so we'll see how he does on that. And also he's going to tell us about how his dream Speedway meeting might look as well. If he could choose the track and the lineups and the referee and change some rules and make everything perfect. That's in the next part of Humans of Speedway. You're listening to Humans of Speedway, part of the Sports Social Podcast Network. Other Speedway podcasts are available on that channel. If you search for the Sports Social Podcast Network online, you will also find the official British Speedway podcast, No Brakes, No Fear, also hosted by myself, which is having a bit of a break through the winter, but has been operational throughout the entire season. There is an episode discussing the AGM and all that you can expect for 2024. sure. Make sure you check that out. And another podcast on this network is the Round the Boards podcast. They themselves, I think, are having a little bit of a break for the winter as well, but they've got plenty of great guests from across the course of the year. So check that out online. Right now, we're going to hear how Alun Rossiter's dream speedway meeting might look. You've got a lot of experience, Rosco, as a rider and as a team manager, but right now we're going to get you to be a promoter as well, which is something, of course, you have experience of. But this time, you've got an open checkbook and you've got stadium availability. In fact, you can have any stadium in the world and you can have any rider as well. So this is going to be pretty easy for you, I hope. But let's start by talking about the track. If you're going to put an event on, you're going to build a track now, in your dream stadium, which track would you be looking to install in it?
God, I was thinking about this last night, and I had I had one track in Australia which I absolutely love riding, and that was just a concrete wall. That was at the Exeter. I don't know why. I always had very good meetings there, but in England. If I was a rider now, I've got to say, and this sounds a little bit biased, but the new shape Swindon track, God, it would be a track to behold now with it because after we changed the shape, we made it shorter, we made it wider, and the racing lines and the likes of Rasmus Jensen, like outside, inside Jason Doyle, and people rave about the Bellevue track. I got to say, without, and people say, oh, he's just biased, but the new Swindon track was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that it didn't really, people didn't see enough of it. Yeah.
I mean, think recently there was a clip on X, Twitter, when Razza come off 15 metres and passed Jamin Lindsay and the French rider, Dimitri Burge.
Yeah.
He came from 15 metres and he was inside, outside, and it didn't look like he was going to do it. And then coming off the pit corner, overtook Dimitri Burge to the line.
That's the kind of stuff you want.
It was just like, and as I said, and as the years would have gone on, the banking would have gone up a little bit more. The track would have settled even more. But, people rave about Bellevue, but the new Swindon shaped track, I got to say, for me, it for racing, is on par, because sometimes at Bellevue, as I've heard about it, if you're 54 kilos, you're fine. But if you're 80 kilos, you're going to struggle around there. So I think the good thing about Swindon, that is, no matter what weight you were, if you could ride a bike, inside, outside, whatever, it was truly the new shaped Swindon track for me.
Okay, so that's the track. But if you're going to pick a stadium for the overall atmosphere, the viewing experience and all that, which stadium would you put that track in?
The Wembley was pretty special, but again, if you're going to pick a club, I mean, Poole with it, packed grandstands was pretty special. And Coventry, the British finals, I don't think you'll ever get an atmosphere like. I think you talk to any of the previous riders that, when you used to have the British final and the overseas final. I think Coventry was pretty special with it ram-packed too. Poole and Coventry.
It was always packed, wasn't it? And it was usually sunny. I remember going to a couple of them. I certainly went to the one the year Gary Havelock won the world title, 1992, I think.
Yeah, 1992. But you'd have them meetings and they were absolutely, rammed to the rafters. You'd have the overseas final, the intercontinental finals, and they were absolutely rammed. And being involved, like getting to the British final, was always a special day at Coventry. Getting there on a hot, sunny Sunday afternoon and just getting there and like riding in them. They were special meetings, very, very special meeting, the old British finals at Coventry.
Okay, Rosco, big moment now. Time for your dream 1 to 7, your all-time lineup. As a former promoter, this is the dream job for you in itself, because no points limits. You can spend as much as you want, and they're all going to say yes. So who's going to be in your all-time 1 to 7 then? Any rider at all?
Oh, I struggle here because I could go about 10 riders because of the era I come through. Obviously, Bob Kilby would have to be there because he kind of started it for me. Barry Briggs. I had a good report. It's funny because Lee Ashby was doing these motocross and speedway legends chats, a bit like we're doing today. And he had Billy Hamill on. And, we were discussing these sort of meetings yesterday. And it's like you go through them eras. And like I've got that crossover era of like the early days of like Kilby, Briggo. And I think I remember making Briggo one of Briggo's books that he used to have out back in the day. And there was a photo of Briggo stood there talking to me being mascot. And I made a whole page of Briggo's Briggo book. So
wow,
that was pretty special. We were trying to find it last night, but I've told him which book it's in and he's going to try and hunt it down. But let's go for it. So I said Kilby, Briggo, Phil Crump, absolute legend. Phil Crump. I have to say his son Jason.
Yes, who you rode with at Poole.
And Jason lived with me for many years. We had a single garage with 7 bikes, and we used to always have to put the spare bikes in the van because we never had enough room. And certainly when it rained, it was very difficult. It was the smallest workshop in the world. Obviously Jason, and I over the years I got to know Phil really well, and I lived with Phil in Australia, travelled with Phil all over Australia with Phil. So the Crump family definitely got to be in there. Tony Rickardson, 100%.
Yes, absolute legend.
And then you're coming into the new era. You're looking at Jason Doyle. I've had some, believe it or not, me and Doyle have had a few ding dongs over the years, but the respect and the mutual respect towards each other is there. And then obviously his current partner in crime at the moment at Ipswich, Emil Safutinov.
Yeah, Emil, I mean, what a signing he's turned out to be, not just for Ipswich, but for British Speedway as a whole. And little wonder he's been voted Rider of the Year for this year. He's
just an ultimate pro. He's just an ultimate professional. And nowadays, that's how you've got to be if you want to go forward. Back in the day, you could get away with things. Social media was another big thing back then. There wasn't. You could make a mistake as a manager back then. It wasn't analysed and scrutinised and done at the time. Now it's you make that mistake. Oh, Rossiter stuffed up there. He should have made a change there.
Yeah, the whole social media and all, the internet era certainly provides at times some unwanted feedback, doesn't it? Let's move on to the rules then. A rule or something that you would change about Speedway, and I think yours is based around points limits and this thing that we talked about, I think, a few times. Any promoter who's had a successful season will be feeling the effects of this. Sheffield or Glasgow or whoever it is, having to reinvent your team because your averages have gone up and the points limit comes in and you've got to make changes. We're seeing a lot of that at the moment, and you would probably look at that area.
So many times over the years we did, I believe at Swindon, we did the right thing. We lost Jason Doyle when he became world champion. And we gave up having him in our team because they turned him onto a 12-point average. You've got to stop this. They've all got to come together and work together and forget about look at the bigger picture. They've got to come together and work. No matter you might win it this year, that team might win it next year. But the trouble is the blinkers come down and it's all the focus is on them. And if that could change, that would be a massive start, in my humble opinion, of all the years of being in there. It's too much about their own interest. And that's me just being honest.
I think everybody knows, Roscoe, you always speak as you find. Let's talk about referees. If you were to have a referee to take charge of your dream meeting, who would be your referee of choice?
Tony Steele was a very good referee back in the day. Was excellent. Tony travelled the world with Tony, gone to many meetings abroad and stuff like that. In his day, very, very good referee and was highly thought of then. But Jim Lawrence, Jim, the ex-policeman, and chucking in there. And I know she's getting a little bit of criticism lately. I think Christina Turnbull's a very good ref. Craig Ackroyd has done very well too. I know he's involved on the FIM, and that again, it's hard. People, they're only human, and I've learnt that over the years. And ranting and raving ain't going to get you nowhere. And that was me. That was me in my early days with my passion, and it wasn't good. I had to tone that down and channel it into some other way of making it a positive.
And the final question is regarding the opposition. You've picked your dream 1 to 7, which is a team of all-stars. But if you were to single out one particular team, an actual team that has existed from some point in history, which team would you want to race against?
You go back over the years. Some of the Poole teams you look back on are absolutely phenomenal. Chris Holder, Darcy Ward, Bjarne Pedersen, Davey Watt, Jason Doyle. I mean, I think you'd go very hard to beat any of the Poole teams back when you look at them now, because that's the problem, that supporters go back and go, look at the difference in that team and now. But I get why Speedway has the points limit, because you can't have a Man City I always say this, Speedway can't afford to have a Man City as Speedway, because people would not go. If you just gave them all an open checkbook and said crack on with it, you'd have your have-bees and your have-nots, unfortunately. But I would say for teams that stand out, there was maybe 3, 4. I mean, you had likes with Greg Hancock in there and Tony Rickardson in one team. I remember rightly. I don't know if I'm 100% right on that, whether they raced together. But you had Darcy, Chris, Greg. And you look at them and you think, wow. Like if you put that team out and you go, whoa, that's amazing. I would say there's two or three, even maybe 4 Poole teams for me that I would say that really, you could see why Matt won so many titles.
Yeah, some of those riders obviously have been pretty good over the era, and they do have that knack of finding the talent as well, don't they? So it'll be interesting to see who comes to the tapes in 2024 for the Pirates. Thanks a lot, Rosco. It's been great chatting with you about your career and everything else. Before you go, the final question, and this is a new feature on the Humans of Speedway podcast, a new game called The Fish Game. Do you like angling? Are you a fisherman, Rosco?
No, I hate it. I tried it. The most boringest thing. As much as it'd be good for me because I need some of that downtime. No, I know that Nick Morris used to say to me over the years, he's kind of keen on it, but not for me, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, I think you can still play. It's a simple premise. 30 seconds on the clock. As many different types of fish as possible. No whales and no dolphins. That's the main rule. 30 seconds on the clock. Are you set, Rosco?
Oh, you got me now because I don't do fish, but okay. Here we go. Ready?
Contenders ready. It's the Fish Game.
Cod, roe, haddock, mackerel, roach, shark, sea bass. I'm absolutely rubbish at this. I can't think. I said cod. I can't. No, I'm rubbish.
Fisherman's block gets the best of us sometimes. You scored 7.
David Norris should be the king on this one, let me tell you.
All right, well, 7 then. You are top of the leaderboard because you're the first to play, but good effort.
The shark or dolphin, they're a fish, aren't they?
You can have shark. A dolphin's a mammal.
All right, okay.
So no, you can't have a dolphin. We've got to draw the line somewhere, and that is it. Rosco, thanks a lot for chatting with us. It's been great speaking with you, and never say never to seeing you back in charge of a Speedway club again, yeah?
Yeah, no, I must admit, I am, getting the itch to have a go. Like I say, you never say never. If the right offer come along, and I was heavily involved in planning that team, then I would probably have a look at it. But until that happens, and I don't see it happening, unfortunately, as I said, no matter how successful you are, most of the clubs are closed shops and they got their own people involved. But never say never.
Don't rule out Rosco. Alun Rossiter, my guest in this episode of Humans of Speedway. Hope you've enjoyed it. And don't forget to like or subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And there are some massive ones on the way. Let me tell you, we're going right to the very top. So don't miss those when they come along. The next episode I can reveal will be with Ben Cook of the Peterborough Panthers and the Poole Pirates in 2023. Of course, he'll be looking for new frontiers in 2024, but we'll hear from Ben Cook, one of the rising stars of British Speedway, in the next episode. In the meantime, though, if you want more, there's loads of previous episodes to catch up on. If you're new to the podcast, scroll back through some of those and pick through them, and we'll be back with a brand new episode of Humans of Speedway very soon.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit matchup to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.